Hello, I'm Sabah.
Hello, I'm Olive.
Olive, can you tell me when you were born and what life was like before the Second World War?
Well, I was born in actually the First World War. I was born the 11th of March in 1916. Well, we had quite a nice childhood. Most of the after effects of the war had started to fade. People just got on with the job. There was an awful lot of unemployment, apparently. A lot of the fellas coming back from the war hadn't got jobs. So things were quite a bit tight as far as money goes for most people.
When did you first start work?
I left school when I was 14 and I started work more or less straight away. We had a shop, a little sort of corner shop, where we sold grocery, and I went to the firm that supplied us with our grocery, and I went as an apprentice to go through that trade. I left there, I stayed there for about 2 years, then I left there and went into a factory.
When did you first become a nurse?
Well, when I left into the grocery business, I went into a factory, and there was an awful lot of talk then that there was possibly going to be a war. So I joined the Red Cross, and we used to do voluntary work at the General Hospital because we were attached to the General Hospital then. And the trained staff, the sister and the doctor of the wards, helped to train us. And then we used to do voluntary work like Handsworth Flower Show and that sort of thing. But then, as it got nearer to the fear that there was going to be a war, we used to do demonstrating training sessions for people to learn first aid. But our training was more put towards looking after people that were injured during the war. It came as quite a shock when it did eventually arrive.
Olive, I think you were in the VAD. What was that?
That's what you were if you joined the Red Cross. But there were two sections. You could be an ordinary VAD, which meant you were a voluntary nurse, or you could be what they call a mobile. You were still voluntary at that time, but you signed up as a mobile to say that you were quite willing to be sent anywhere in the world to do nursing duties, like they are today, really. But you had to say that you would go anywhere, like an army, like in the army, to say king and country. And then we used to go to different hospitals for more training. We went to lectures or hospitals. We had a trained sister that helped to train us in our own time. And we used to have to spend an awful lot of time on lectures. We were assigned as a detachment to the new Queen Elizabeth that had only just been opened, with the news that if war was declared, or when it was declared, we would be immediately expected to make our way there to be put on duty. And that's the thing that we did as soon as war broke out. The war broke out on Sunday, just before lunchtime. I went home from hearing war declared at the drill hall, and I was on duty at the QE by 2 o'clock.
When did you have to deal with your first casualties, and what were they?
We didn't have any casualties, war casualties, one or two from the bombing while we was at the QE. But as soon as the Germans started moving into France, there were a lot of what we call the British Expeditionary Forces that were already there. Mainly they were guards, and they moved them from France into Belgium. And the first to move out and that came across were moved into what we had already moved into, which was an emergency hospital in Longbridge, Birmingham. And they came in on trains from the station at Ballgreen, were put onto coaches that had been transferred into ambulances, and they were brought into us overnight. And the funny part about it was that a lot of this trained staff, the QAs rather, Queen Alexandra nurses, they were what I'd met at the QE. So we got to know quite a few of them back again. And from there, we were having mostly the people that had been evacuated from Birmingham hospitals during the raids. They were moved up to us because we were on the perimeter of Birmingham. And we didn't get a great deal. At that time, we hadn't got, we weren't near to the bombing. We could see it, but we were on the outskirts then. Then from there, I think the first lot of war casualties we had was from the balloon barrage that was stationed in a field, in Northfield, adjoining the golf club. And they got a balloon barrage up. And we never knew why, actually, but one of the balloons came down, and a lot of the Air Force that was at the balloon barrage were injured, and they brought them straight over to us. A lot of the burns were head injuries, and it was quite nasty, actually, especially for us, because we'd never seen anyone so badly injured at that. But from there, it gradually got that they moved the civilians out and they moved the military in. We had 5 lots coming in. We had the first 5 from Dunkirk that came into us overnight, different nights, before there was anything published in the papers to say that they were bringing the Dunkirk in. And the thing that stuck out the most was the fact that you could see what we were hearing on the news. In actual fact, there were people brought in that had got no clothes. We had to take, well, the RAMCs took pyjamas and things like that. And they were wheelchaired in or on shutters. Some of them were able to come in, and they absolutely stunk of petrol, because they had been in the water where the water was mixed with what would come off the boats when they were sunk. We had 5 lots, and the most notable one to me was a soldier said, "We don't know where we are. We came in the dark, we don't know where we are. Can you tell me where we are?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "You were actually at Hollymore, and that is just outside Rubery." And he started to cry. So I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I only live up the road." He said, "So I'm at home." So I said, "Oh, but you're lucky, aren't you?" He said, "Yes," he said, "and as soon as I can get someone to the phone for me," he said, "I'm going to let my mum know I'm home." So that was quite, it went on for like that for a long, long time. But the first 5 lots we had in, you never knew what you were going to get. It was a strange sort of life, really. But we all had our own fun. Longbridge, the Austin Works, were very good to us. There was 2 departments there, and they adopted 2 wards with the idea they were going to supply that ward. On a Wednesday, you had supper. On a Sunday, you had the tea. Now they came in and asked, we were one of the wards that were lucky enough to be adopted. We had 72 patients on our ward. And on a Monday, you got a representative coming over from Longbridge, how many patients we'd got. Now, for supper, they could have either half a chicken or meat pie. There was salad, or there was potato salad, and there was sweet pudding. They also supplied them with a packet of cigarettes for every patient, which made it that the people who didn't smoke managed to cash in because they sold theirs to another soldier who was there, because the one wanted more and he didn't want his, so he passed them on. It was quite an occupation, it was. But if it was on the Sunday, there was ham or tins of salmon to make sandwiches, and a thing we hadn't had for a long time, there was cream cakes, and sometimes there was trifle. So all in all, we had a very nice time and a very different course put to our rations. It was quite good fun.
Were you aware of the bombings?
Yeah, because we used to get some of them in from Birmingham sent up to us. The most scary, I think, of it was there was an air raid on, and suddenly the bombers that were going over stopped. They were dropping flares, but they were big ones. We learnt after they were called chandeliers, and they were over what we knew as the Spark Brook area. We were told that apparently they were looking for the BSA works, which was doing an awful lot of war work, and they did bomb them for a long time during the night. And apparently there was one machine shop that got the worst of the bombing. The whole department was bombed and collapsed. I think the majority, there was very little people saved out of there. Most of them were more or less, as you could say, buried alive with the machinery. And eventually, after the raid and later on, they decided that the best thing was to seal it over, because they couldn't get any people out. There was an awful lot of machinery in there as well. And they decided the best way to do it was to seal it over. And I don't know now whether it's been altered, but for a long, long time that's how it lasted. That was one of the worst raids we had. One of the nurses, there was 2 nurses to every bedroom, and the nurse to my bedroom was on the same ward, and she came off duty and came to me and she said, I know we were not allowed to go out. If there was a raid on, you weren't allowed out. If you were expecting some to come back from France, you weren't allowed out. If you'd gone to bed, you were woken up and expected to go back on duty. And she said, I live right by the BSA. I'm going home to see if all my people are okay. Anyway, she went, and the next morning I was worried stiff in case she didn't come back. But she got back in time to get on duty, and luckily their house hadn't been bombed and her family were all right, so she was quite happy, came back. But I was worried stiff in case she didn't get back.
I gather you got married in the war.
Yes, I did. My husband came in as a patient. He was in the army. He'd not been on active service, but apparently he'd got very high insteps on his feet, and the bone construction of his feet collapsed. So he's brought into us, but also then they found out that he had got heart trouble. His heart used to suddenly miss a beat and it just collapsed down on the floor. So after a while they decided he was well enough to go back to his unit. He was on leave and shortly afterwards back he came to us. I didn't like him then. He used to make me feel very embarrassed walking up and down the ward. But eventually, he was quite a nice fella. And as a bet, I was dared to go out with him. We weren't supposed to go out with a patient. And the sister on our ward was very much that way. The saying was, if I find out you've going out with a patient, I shall report you to matron. Well, there was 1 or 2 of us that risked it. But eventually, when he went out, he used to come home on leave, and he used to come up to the ward, and the sister had the different view that he'd come up to see her until I'd left. When he eventually was discharged out of the army, I still went out with him But when we were getting married, he was supposed to be doing fire watching, and his doctor said he wasn't fit enough. So I went back to the job I was doing before, long enough before the war, and I was supposed to go fire watching. So I applied for an exemption, which I got, because he wasn't allowed to be left at night in case he had a turn. And neither of us did fire watching, and it was quite a long time. I think it was about 4 or 5 months before he even went back to work.
How did you celebrate the end of the war?
I suppose the same as everybody else. All the streets were collecting and going to have a good party. It was divided. When the war ended in Europe, of course there was a war still going on in Burma and Japan. So by that time I'd got 2 children. So it was just a case of doing the same as everybody else. We had street parties and dressing up. Everybody took the tables out into the street, chairs out into the street. Everybody made something, or cakes, bread, trifles, whatever you could get, because rationing was still very tight. Actually, I was all right. My father-in-law was a butcher. But it was wartime still, up to a point. But everybody made their own enjoyment. I quite enjoyed myself, I know.
Olive, I really enjoyed talking to you this morning. Thank you for coming to see me.
Very nice coming to see you. I enjoyed it.